Movement presents The Honest Pod with Carrie Garcia. Join us for honest conversations at the intersection of theology, neuroscience, and story engagement. Whether you're a coach, ministry leader, parent, or someone simply longing to love people more intentionally, we welcome you to the table. This is your invitation to greater honesty, healing, and a journey with God to reclaim your story and live free and fully alive in His love. Let's dive into today's episode.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Honest Pod. Just a little caveat this morning before I introduce our amazing guest. I went to the gym this morning, guys, and I haven't gone to the gym. I know, Kaitlyn, it's a big deal. I don't think I've gone to the gym in maybe a year, and I hated it. I hated every minute of it. I was grouchy getting up. I went and worked out. Mario went with me, bless his heart. He's very much a morning person. So he's like chatting and he had sniffles, and the sniffles were driving me crazy. I just was like, so I am coming on here. I've been home for 30 minutes before we recorded this. I've showered and I had some food. I feel better, but I just felt like I needed you to know, I need to know when this feels good. When this hey, like all of a sudden we've turned the corner and I like it. That's not happened. So we are talking about trust today. And I am trusting all of you workout people that have told me over and over again, Carrie, you're going to start getting this high and you're going to start feeling amazing and you're going to have more energy. And today was my first day and I do not have that. So this is a perfect segue into what we're talking about today because I don't feel it. I don't see it. I didn't like any of it. There was not one part of it that I liked today. Not a single thing. None of it. And I was sweaty. I felt gross. But I was sitting in the car thinking to myself as Mario's driving, people have told me, I almost reached out to my friend, Elisa Keaton. You guys may know her. I almost reached out to her and said, tell me that this is going to get better. Like, I need to trust what you're saying. So I thought that was an interesting way of segueing into kind of our part 2 around trust this morning or this afternoon or whenever you're seeing this. And I really wanted to bring she's not just my friend. Okay. She is my friend, but literally has been like my pseudo therapist. She works for Freedom Movement. She is like our resident therapist at Freedom Movement. We're all coming up behind you, getting our stuff, Kaitlyn, but you have led the way in being the therapist for Freedom Movement. And she has written a lot of the curriculum for our trainings. She is a storywork facilitator. She is a mom extraordinaire, but I will tell you, this woman, when you hear her, it's like you automatically trust her. Just her voice makes you feel like I can trust this woman. So Kaitlyn, welcome to the Honest Pod and our 11 listeners. We are so glad you're here.
Aw, thanks so much for having me. It's really good to be here.
I am so glad. And I'm so glad to be able to kind of pull back the veil on this conversation around trust and a little bit of what we talked about last week. If you guys haven't listened, maybe you're just coming on because you saw, thank God there's a therapist. I want to hear her. And you haven't really heard like a lot of what we struggle with as humans. And I'm going to have Kaitlyn speak to quite a bit of this, but we know that there's this process to healing. We know that there's this process where, we've gone over it for several weeks: name, grieve, repent, gratitude, forgiveness, stepping into our calling. And really, we ask ourselves often, why does this take so long? Why can't God just come in, rescue me out of the pit, and make life better? And the reality is God knows how He made our brain. He knows how He made us, and He knows how He wired us. And we just don't connect and trust that easily. And what He's building over time is really our trust centers, our ability to trust ourselves, God, and others. So Kaitlyn, I would love to hear from you, just from your personal perspective around this idea around trust, because you're, by all intents and purposes, what I've known of you before is you're a pretty trusting person. Like you really didn't have a problem with this. So I would love to hear a little bit about how trust was for you, and then maybe where trust went awry, where you were like, oh, maybe I can't trust. And tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll kind of build on it from there.
Sure. I can look back at younger versions of me that were so trusting, and I actually love that about myself. I
Yes.
love that as I began to build a relationship with God, it was not hard for me to trust Him. It wasn't hard for me to trust other people. But I do see as I've gotten older that there were some tough things related to that. And I think I appreciate the aspects of growing up that allowed me to trust more.
Mm,
But I also think that in some ways I had some rose-colored glasses, and I had some real hope that if I did well on my side, that there would, and if I invest well, that there would be an ROI, there would be a return on my investment.
mm,
And so the responsibility of how a relationship works out felt like it was mine. And that helped me feel more in control.
mm,
But I started to realize there's aspects of relationship that I actually have no control over.
mm,
And that was really disorienting as far as what do you do with trust?
mm. So good. And you and I are so different. For me, there was I can trust no one. Like so hypervigilant, so like, and really having to scan every room. Like every room, I didn't know this when I was younger. I just thought I went into a room and scanned a room and it's like, what do they need me to be? And I'll be that so I don't get hurt, like, but I don't think I knew that at the time. And yet you had this, rose colored glasses per your words. And what would you say, in the flip side of that, you different than me, the coping mechanism for you, the operating, because really trust, from what you've said, is about vulnerability and being able to show your weakness and being able to have that held. Can you speak a little bit to those that are listening that are much more like you, the people pleaser, the one that's like, I'm going to see rose colored glasses, and how that showed up in your life and actually created some dysfunction there?
Well, I think in some ways it also makes me think about the systems that I was in.
Mhm.
I I was able to fit within the systems that I was in and
Mm.
to do it well. I looked the part, I could play the part, I could hold things back. I could give if you want me to. I could do the dance well.
Mm.
And that became a huge part of my identity,
Mhm.
fitting in with what you wanted me to be well.
Mm.
And I think there was a coping strategy for me there.
Mhm.
But also, it came with a sense of I can control the outcome of relationships, of circumstances. And it actually, one of the things that brought about a huge shift or for me was having a child with autism
Mhm.
and realizing that no matter how I helped my child didn't fit in the systems. And
Mm.
actually, as I came alongside my child to advocate for them, I realized that I no longer fit in the system because I wasn't adhering to what they wanted from me anymore.
Mm.
And I began to see the way it wasn't safe for my child to trust in these systems. And I don't know, I guess the disconnect of fitting in the systems began to be come into my own awareness and realize
Mhm.
that not everybody fits in the systems.
I mean, it started unraveling,
Oh yeah.
a lot of, because I've had the honor of being around during that time. And, if you're okay to talk a little bit about this, because I think a lot of people, when they're in a system, and let's just say like a church system, or, where it's easy to fit in that system if everything is okay, if everything fits in that system. But the moment it doesn't, What was that like for you when you have this diagnosis, you have this amazing daughter, but does not fit in this system, and you have to advocate for her. And then the people that, you know, were supposed to be there for you or support you began to walk away or turn away. I don't really know. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because that had to rattle all of the systems that you've created for yourself and how you fit in. Like, what was that like for you? And what did that do internally?
Yeah, I think I trusted that the systems, people in authority, people who said they were experts, I trusted that they were going to look out for my good and that they were going to look out for my daughter's good.
Mm,
And I was wrecked by the fact that I started to put the pieces together. Well, because here's what happened. When it started to fall apart, I did my normal thing by saying, it must be me. If
mm,
I could do something different, or if she could do something different, then these systems and relationships would work.
mm,
But that started creating a disconnect in how I was treating her or
mm,
in what I was expecting from her. And I'm looking at her realizing, oh, you need to be you. And
mm,
I need to figure out how to support you as you. Like, I was losing trust with her. I was losing trust with myself. I was losing trust with God
mm,
as I was trying to depend on others working well, right?
mm,
And so I think there was this realization that I had to, like, I don't know, pull back. I had to
mhm,
regroup. I
mhm,
had to recognize that there actually is this other side of relationships. I
mm.
can't always trust. The trust was broken, really.
Yeah. So Shalom was shattered.
Absolutely.
There was a shattering. And in this shattering, I mean, it was, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but devastating. Like, it was devastating to watch your daughter, wrestle and struggle. And I mean, I remember that. I remember, those days, especially the early days of the wrestle for you of this shattering and no support. And, even when you would advocate, it was like you were crazy. And, what for you, here you did have trust in the system. You did have trust in, like, the church. You had trust in these spaces, and they let you down. There was a place where it was like, you guys, I was too messy for you, and you turned away. And for you, what did that shattering and that wrestle begin to bring up in you, not just but internal of about what you believe about yourself or the systems at large, the church, the school system, whatever. What did that bring up in you internally? Because I know there's a lot of people out there that are listening to this going, yeah, I've had that shattering, whether it's a diagnosis with a child or a loss or whatever. There's something internally that happens when that shattering happens and you move to your coping mechanisms. Like, let me double down on this. And it didn't work. What was your
Didn't.
process of walking through that? And what happened in you that brought you to a process of walking through that?
Well, I was seeing a therapist at the time who would always bring up a feelings words list and
Yeah.
have you take a look at it.
Yes.
And and then it would surprise me what would come up. And actually, as you were saying that, and I was remembering and being back in that time, that feeling bubbled up again that I was able to name in a session, and that was hated.
Mm,
And I had worked my whole life to be loved.
wow.
I'm an Enneagram 2. That's my
Yeah.
deepest desire. And I was doing it pretty well.
Mhm.
And in and as I was trying to partner well with my daughter, what I was bumping up against was feeling hated.
Mm,
And I do think that listening well to what was coming up in myself and
mm.
how I think just starting
Yeah.
with, yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
the start of a path forward because I didn't want to hate myself and I definitely didn't want to hate her.
Mhm.
And so if you're around me at all, I always come back to these two words, and they're compassion and curiosity.
Mhm.
And I think what was happening for me at the time was I wanted to revert to all of my strategies. I
Mhm.
wanted to double down. I wanted to figure out how to say the right thing. If I could phrase this for you in the right way, then you could understand me and then you could be okay with me.
Mm.
If I could get her to do the right things or to understand what's needed of her in the systems. And this was before we had the autism diagnosis. So
Right.
she was struggling immensely, but I didn't even have that language to give for
Mm.
her.
Mm.
And so I think I wanted to double down with all of my normal strategies, and they were creating turning against myself, a turning against my daughter, and turmoil
Mhm.
within how to navigate a system because I
Mhm.
had no centered, trusting place inside myself. And
Mm.
I didn't even know where to bring the Lord into all of this. But when I started with where I was really at, then I started to get curious about
Mhm.
how I came to this place.
Mm.
And then thankfully, my therapist had autistic twins that were about 10 years older than my
Mm.
kiddo. And I didn't even know about the autism at the time, but it was the wisdom and trust of somebody else, the
Mhm.
confidence that he held that started inviting me in to
Mhm.
some more of that compassion for
Mhm.
myself, for my
Mhm.
kiddo. Um, and I think, since that time, that's been something that I've loved being a part of Freedom Movement because of the way we get to offer that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me partner with you as you try to rebuild trust where it's been broken.
Mhm. What was it like for you rebuilding trust outside of, your therapist? What did that look like? Because I know that I know Kaitlyn before and I know Kaitlyn after. And it was kind of happy go lucky and whatever. And then there was a sobering in you and a reality and, a more cautious willingness to give of your heart, even in our team and whatever. I mean, you're amazing now, but like you're amazing then too. But there was such woundedness and such cautiousness, probably a healthy level of cautious, but also like, I don't know if I can trust. And so what was that like for you being able to move back into relationships and trusting people with your sweet daughter and you and your heart and the complexity of what you were holding?
I think a big piece that happened to me is that I had to stop giving away what's true.
Hmm.
I let other people say to me and define for me what was true of me, what was true of God, what was true of what I was supposed to do, and what was true of my daughter. And
Mhm.
I really had to take that back.
Hmm.
But that was really difficult for me because I think it had served me as I can please you by
Mhm.
lining up with you as an authority, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I just remember that wrestle, and I remember you coming to me, and we were doing like a retreat or something. I don't know. We do stuff together all the time. And I remember you saying, like, I'm choosing to be here, but I'm on guard. This was early on. Like, I'm on guard of how will you guys receive me? How will you receive my daughter? And really, the only thing we could do was say, come, like, because you can't say anything until you do something. It's like you can tell me that you're going to be safe all day long, but that's only going to prove itself in what I see. And there was a decision you had to make. Like, am I going to choose to be vulnerable? And will my vulnerability be safe? Like, there was a choice for you. And I wonder for so many people that you come across, and even in Freedom Academy and whatever, they come to, trainings, or they come to therapy or whatever, and they have an idea that it's going to be safe. They want it to be safe. They want to trust the people in the room. In fact, I think their head would say, this is a trustworthy space. But when they get in that space, their body freaks out. Like, no matter what we do, no matter what you say, it's like, no, I can't trust you. And they start seeing like every little thing you say is, well, what did you mean by that? And say, like, can you speak a little bit? And maybe you can, maybe you can't. What's going on inside them when they're coming into that space? They want it to be safe. They maybe know it's safe, but everything in them is telling them, no, I cannot trust this space. What's going on inside them?
I think it makes me first want to speak to something that you know how passionate I am about this, about safety. But years ago, I got to go hear in person. I got to hear speak this man, Dr. James Finley. He's a Christian thinker he's really contemplative, but he's also a psychologist. So I love getting to hear from him. He just has this depth. Actually, honestly, most of the things he says, I'm like, that just went right over my head. He's so deep, but I love it. But there was a Q&A time, and there was a man that got up and humbly, shaking, he says, I have severe PTSD. And I have been trying everything. And there was this sense that this man was up for the work. He was willing to do whatever it took. And he said, but it's been so hard. And he broke down. And I was waiting for what Dr. Finley would say. And he said something that has just like embedded in me and walked with me. And I want to share it with you. Is that he said that safety and vulnerability, they need to go hand in hand in equal measure. And I realized that so often I was exposing my heart and I was offering my vulnerability when I was not safe. And I was doing it as almost like a leverage, a way to try to build trust and build relationships, but it was coming at a cost to my own settledness in my body. And so I now guard in a new way, figuring out, is somebody else safe? And is a system safe? I don't have to judge this person or this system as good or bad, but I get to shift my internal boundaries of how much I'm going to bring of myself. And then I get to test and see if it's tried and true over time.
Yes.
And I welled up with some emotion as I thought about you reminding me of that story, because our team did so good with my fragile heart in that moment. And then they have proved tried and true over time with some of the hardest pieces that I've brought to the table.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, really good. And it's interesting because as you're saying, you would share vulnerably to places that actually wasn't proving tried and true. And on the flip side of that, my story is that I will share nowhere, even if it is tried and true, even if it proves itself, because it's like I can't believe that it would be safe. And so I wonder for both of us, it's almost like two sides of the same, of the same coin, right? They both are coming from a place of distrust. And so I'm either going to give you everything so I can hopefully find trust. I'm like, I'm giving you nothing because, this isn't trustworthy. And so what I hear you saying is the place needs to be safe, but there's also going to have to be a risk of going, I am going to override. And I don't mean override in, like something that feels very true, but at some level you had to override your heart and going, I think I have to try to trust this group of women because I desire connection. I know that I want healing. And I know that what was broken in relationship needs to be healed in relationship. but there has to be like something that you choose, because for me, there's an overriding of my system. And I'm like, okay, I have seen these people. They have been good and they have been true. I am going to offer my heart, even though everything in my body is like, abort, 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 you know? And how do you know, and maybe you don't know this, but how do you know the difference of like, when do you stay true and go, this is not safe? And then when do you override it? I mean, I have thoughts about that, but I'd be curious what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, what I shared a little bit earlier is that I was giving away, like, in some ways, like giving away my vulnerability and
Mm-hmm.
putting it in somebody else's hands. And I've taken that back now. And so I think there's room for me to test out what I can bring,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that ultimately I'm going to hold and I'm going to, in, in connection with the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
hold the truth of who I am and if I'm safe. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's, with the work I've done, be able to feel a little bit more confident
Mm-hmm.
in self and then move out towards people,
Yeah.
instead of, and I think it would look the same in some ways for both of us
Right.
as we move out from like a more secure base of what's going on inside of ourselves and our connectedness to the Lord.
Yes. And I know that's been true in my own life. And I saw that with you, even kind of coming back into this group after so much, when I say our group, like our team. And I remember, and you probably don't, but remember this, maybe you do, but I remember the first time that you had kind of come back into the group, in a sense. We were going to work together and we were sitting at my house and there were a bunch of us here and you were sitting on the couch, and you're a very discerning woman and you hear from the Lord in prophetic ways. And I've known this about you for years. And I remember, I don't even know if you remember this, but I remember saying, like, Kaitlyn, if you get a word, let us know or whatever. You've always had a word. Historically, God has always put something on your heart. Like, that's just something I know about you. And you tend to be someone that I would lean on to go, what am I missing? What do I need to see here? And I remember looking at you and asking if you had anything, and you just shook your head no. I was like, okay, but I knew in my spirit
Mm.
you weren't ready to share that part of you yet. You were just seeing, can I be here after all this stuff, the church hurt, the school system hurt, like all of this stuff that you had as a mama who's just trying to protect her baby, and to feel so rejected and so misunderstood in so many ways. And I just remember thinking, the fact that you were in the room with us was as much as you could do. And that was enough for that moment. And so what I hear you saying is, that act of sitting on my couch and being in our group, that was the step of vulnerability for you. That was the testing of the waters. Like, how does my body feel here? And I think that's really important for people, when you are sitting in a group and everyone's sharing vulnerably and your body is freaking out, maybe it's not the time to just go, all right, I'm just going to give everything, which I think we could tend to do in a trauma response. But what does it look like to just honor the fact that your body is there? Like, that's a huge move, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think back to that time and I think about all the work I had been doing, deep, hard work,
Yes.
and it had unraveled years,
Mm-hmm.
years of programming of how I would
Yes.
live in the world, how I would move in relationships in a way that seemed protective and to work. But then I came to a place where I was like, these things aren't working for me anymore.
Right.
Being this pleaser that just tries to always shift in myself, that denies my own wisdom to try to be who, that wasn't working for me anymore.
Right. It had become maladaptive.
Exactly, right? But there's a period of disorientation where we're like, well, then How do I show up?
Right.
How do I do relationships, right? And all of the ways that I used to make sense of things automatically, right? We often have a lot of thinking mistakes that we depend on. We would even call those cognitive distortions, that our brain
Mm.
goes, this is how I make sense of my environment. This is how I make sense of the world. And because of the work I was doing, I was upended, but I also wanted to trust the process because I knew I was in the middle of it. And so
Mhm.
for me to show up, I knew there's a lot swirling, and some
Yeah.
of it's me and some of it's, outside of me. But I used to boil things down in ways that made sense. And that's really storied for me.
Mhm.
And I would usually show up in a room and I would say, everything's, related to me and what I do. I did a lot of internal blaming instead of external blaming, right? But
Yes.
I wanted to come more honestly into spaces. And so I come back to that curiosity. What's coming up? I remember sitting there, what's coming up in me?
Mhm.
What's going on here? What does
Mhm.
this feel like to be here? And what do I want it to look like now? New.
Wow.
And there's something beautiful about getting to rebuild trust with yourself in
Mm.
spaces, especially with safe people.
Mhm.
But it's new and tough.
It's new and hard. Yes. So what would you say to the man or the woman that's listening here and they want to take that vulnerable step? They're like the guy with the PTSD. Like, want I don't want to keep doing these patterns. I don't want to feel like this. But every time I get into those spaces, I freak out. I shut down or I overwrite and I get really big and I have to prove myself and show like what would you say to them to help give them the first step rather than here's 27 steps, the first step in those spaces like that?
Yeah. So for me, it comes back to the curiosity, but it also comes to the privilege I've gotten of being able to trust the process as I walk with people. And I
Mhm.
get to see a transformation happen. I get to see them, move into another space.
Right.
And I think there was some wisdom that I got along the way. And that was how we honor the resistance that comes up in
Mhm.
us. And
Mhm.
so that has been a rhythm that I've picked up. If I'm noticing a resistance, I pause. I get curious about it. And
Mhm.
I oftentimes notice that what might be coming up is protective in nature, but it might also be storied and now
Mhm.
maladaptive.
Mhm.
So if I can go slow and I can go, what's coming up for me right here? What am I scared of? What am
Mm.
I worried might happen? A lot of times I get to coach myself in a new way because
Yes.
my reality at 8 of what would have happened had I not shown up in the ways that I knew and my body were safe to do would have had consequences. But in this space, you know, I could tell myself, you get to leave if this doesn't go well,
Mhm.
and you'll be
Ah,
okay.
that's so good. I wanna round out our time talking about you have these circles that you like to talk about, like the intimacy circles. Could you just explain that a little bit? Because I think that's really helpful for people to kinda get, like, a visual in their head around the circles of intimacy that you have.
Okay, so I have it laminated and I pull it out all the
Oh,
time with
it's so
so
good.
it's just these concentric circles, right?
Mhm,
And I pull it out all the time. I probably just because it was really big for me.
mhm,
Simply what it is there's a circle in the middle and it's the most intimate circle. And you could call it any name you want, but moving out, it gets, further out, further diffuse in your boundaries. So you've got intimate friends, close friends, good friends, casual friends, acquaintances, and strangers. And they move
mm,
out in these concentric circles. Okay, so how I'm wired is that I crave depth. I love vulnerability and depth. Great, I'm a therapist, but
mhm.
I really, and I feel like there's gift in this, but I really thought that everybody belonged in my most intimate circle.
Mm,
And I thought I could get them there by bringing my own vulnerability.
mhm,
And I did not ever consider that some people just might not be a fit or might not be safe for the most intimate circle.
mm,
And so for me, there's been this process of having to take a more honest inventory of where somebody is at.
mm,
And I wanted to stay in my rose colored glasses. And I wanted to think if I continue to invest well, if I continue to shift, if I continue to be who they wanted me to be, then somebody could remain in my intimate circle. And
mm.
yet that didn't work out well for me.
That's right.
Right. And I remember one time to my husband saying, this person said this or whatever. And he looked at me and he was like, yeah, like, Kaitlyn, you've been telling me, experiences with this person over time, right? Like my husband's a data collector. He's
Yeah.
like, and you're surprised why? And I was like, but I thought that I was different and I could diffuse all of the situations and I could, please this person enough that they would never turn on me the way I saw them
Mm,
turn on other people.
mm,
So I had to get a little bit more honest about
mhm,
where people are at so that I can maybe grieve what I was hoping, what I was expecting, what I was longing for. And
mm,
another important piece is that sometimes when we have to shift a relationship, I say there's always room to regroup where we have somebody. And
mhm,
if we need to shift, there's some grief that comes up, but there's also this longing. We thought this person had a potential that we were looking for. And
mhm,
sometimes we think if we lose the person, we also have to deny the longing.
mm,
And that's something that um, I don't believe is true. I believe we get to honor the longing. Like I was longing for a place where my daughter would be accepted. And because the certain places that we started out weren't going to
right.
be the fit, didn't mean that I couldn't figure that out, how to be that place for her, a place she belonged. I had to grow and stretch for that.
Mhm,
But I could also begin to get curious about where those places would be.
mm,
And now, at 19, we've really found those.
mm.
But oftentimes we get so disheartened because we think we need to deny the longing and we don't think that we're going to ever have the safety or trust that we're looking for.
Hmm. So good. And I've actually used your circles before. I was working with a client and she was like so upset that this one friend of hers that knew that she was going through all this pain wasn't asking her about the depths of it, but kept inviting her to go bowling. And she was so mad about this. And I finally paused. I brought out the circles and I said, where would you say that she's on these circles? And
That's good.
she's like, she goes, inner. She's my inner. And I said, well, what makes an inner friend? What makes an inner safe place? And she's like, someone that cares about what I have to say, you know, sits with me and I'm like, okay, per that definition, is she an inner friend? She was like, no, she's not an inner friend. I said, but what friend is she? And she like pointed a couple rungs out. And I said, you need friends in this rung. She's a fun friend. She's going to be your friend that when you don't feel like talking about the hard things and you just want to play bowling and you just want to enjoy life because life is really hard and you can't sit in that all the time, you're going to call her and
Yes.
she's going to play. And she was like, there was like epiphany to her. Can I have friends that are on that rung and not have, I'm like, yes. And the problem is that you have expectation that everybody's supposed to be in this inner circle. So then everybody's failing you and then really no one's safe. And then you trust no one. So
That's right.
these circles have been so profound, even for me, because no one's in the inner circle. It's like no one can be in the inner circle. It's like I won't, but I have a longing for people to be in the inner circle. And what I've realized is having all these people on these rungs have built safety in being able to go like this person's earning their way into the inner circle. And for me, it takes a lot of time, But once they've gotten past all those rungs and they've stayed with me, I have like very small, very few. But once they've gotten there, man, it has allowed me to actually build trust within myself that I can read this accurately. And there's some kind of internal rubric that allows people to go, this is where you're not a stranger, you're an acquaintance. And some people might think they're in your inner circle, but you know where they are. And that's okay if they don't line up, as long as you can be able to understand, like, I don't have to own that. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and for me, it did give me a rubric, exactly, and some confidence that it's okay to keep regrouping when it comes to my relationships. And some of the people that are hardest to do this with are the people that have the most potential.
Hmm.
Because humans, we naturally have a lot of longings, things that
Hmm.
we're hoping for. And sometimes there's these people in front of us, and we're like, but they're so close to being this.
Yes.
But yet the reality is they're not there, and maybe they're not even there in this season.
Hmm.
And it's okay to regroup and grieve. I had one sorry, I did that
It's
again.
okay.
I had wanted them to be there.
Hmm.
And we honor that. And for me, I often bring that before the Lord too. Lord, I was hoping for this.
Hmm.
And I just get some care from that. But
Hmm.
then it gives me this opportunity to kind of take something back and be like, oh, this is something I'm wanting in my life. So
Yeah.
I can start praying for it, and I
Hmm.
can start opening my eyes to where might I find it.
Yes. Rather than being embittered, and rather than like
Exactly.
walled up, like she didn't fit that mold or he didn't fit that mold, so no one will fit that mold. It's
And
like,
then often we turn back to, and it's my fault.
right, right. I'm a
Instead of getting
mess.
curious that there might be something in their own story that prevents them from being safe in this time. And I can stay safe in my own self if I
Yes.
can have some curiosity about what might be going on in somebody else's story.
Huge. So just as we're like ending here, I think what I'm hearing you say is through the process of different places in your story where there's been shattering, it's caused you to have to look and name and grieve some of the stuff in your
Absolutely.
own life. And really, even the repentance of going, I don't want to be bound to people pleasing is a place of bondage, right? And so, like,
Absolutely.
I want to come back, Lord. And you start to see the goodness and the gratitude, the forgiveness that you need to forgive yourself or others. And it's allowed you to step fully into who you were created to be. But that trust that's built over time couldn't have happened by just willing yourself to, I'm just going to trust people now. Like it really, you had to take an internal look at the systems, your own heart, your own places of lack of curiosity, lack of compassion, so that you could start seeing more accurately and trusting yourself, God, and others more clearly. Is that kind of like that? It was almost like two things were going on at the same time. This trust was being built while you were doing this deep work.
Yeah. And I think what we both feel really strongly about is just like how our body is really protective, and it really wants to keep us away from the pain of the darkness and of the
Right.
things that are in the dark, right? But
Right.
you and I have both seen that it's so hard and it's so painful and it's so upending to move towards those shadow parts of our story or
Mm.
ourselves. But I genuinely trust the process of that. I trust the process because I've seen time and again that
Yes.
I move towards something really hard, and the mirror's held up in front of me and I'm like, oh gosh, that's there.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And all I know now is that there's this point A I'm at. I know there's some other place I want to be, and that would be some freedom or some peace or some
Mhm.
transformation, but I have no idea how to get there.
Mm.
But I trust the process because I've seen the Lord move, and I've seen partnership with helping professionals. I've seen it work to move me. But I'm no longer handing my heart over and just saying, do what you want for me. You know,
Yeah.
I I slow myself down. I check in
Mm.
with myself. I take it slow. I notice what's coming up and what do I need right here in the
Mhm.
middle of what I'm dealing with. I
Mm.
For me, the process of healing is so important, but I don't want to abandon myself to do it.
Yes. So good. Well, Kaitlyn, I've loved having you on, and just you're just such a woman of integrity. The integrity gap for you is small because what you say is really what you do. And I want to offer the people that are listening a great resource that you've created called Peace Practices. And could you just like for a minute or so just give us a little bit of what Peace Practices is, and we'll definitely put the link in the show notes of where they can get that. But tell us a little bit, just real quick, about what Peace Practices is.
Yeah, so peace practices is really a way to be checking in with yourself, where you're at, what you might be needing. And then there's 4 sessions, and I include a practice in each one. And that's a wonderful way to start to get curious about what's coming up, what you might need, and also to invite the Lord into your process. So it's
Mhm,
kind of a way almost like to stop and take your own pulse.
mhm,
And I have found that if I partner well with myself in the whole journey, and if I invite the Lord and if I take moments of reflection, then oftentimes the trust that's coming and the confidence that's building right in the middle of it, when you kind of arrive on the other side, you're like, oh my gosh, like I've grown in wisdom and I've grown in truth, right?
ah,
And I see peace practices as a way to really like be present with yourself and build that trust and confidence and kind of solidify the wisdom that's stirring up in your work right in the middle of
mhm.
it.
So good. At the end of the day, guys, trust is embodied. And it's a felt sense. Trust is a
That's
felt
right.
sense that we're experiencing. And one of the things I love about peace practices is it gets you in your body. It helps you get curious about sensations that are coming up for you, because we operate by felt sense, by sensations. And then those sensations tell our brain something, right? And so we need to get a little more in tune with what sensations are coming up. And peace practices is so good. It's led by Kaitlyn. Like she said, it's 4 weeks. It's all online. Like you can go and just buy it. It's a little package deal for you to do at your own pace, at your own time. So if you're interested in getting that, we'll put it in the show notes of where you can get that. And also, if you are looking to get a therapist or need to do some story work with someone, Kaitlyn is a wonderful option. We will also put that link to connect with her and be able to do that. Thank you, Kaitlyn, for all of the hard work that you have done to be able to help lead the way for many of us who are desiring freedom, but are just stuck. We just feel stuck. And you have been, for me personally, such a conduit of real curiosity and kindness towards my own story, where I am so not kind. You have brought so much kindness and so much wisdom. So I love you so much. Thank you so much for being on here today.
It's such a gift to be with you always and to be a part of our team. It's
I
really
know.
special. I love it.
It's been amazing. Well, to all my 11 listeners, listen, be curious and compassionate towards the places of your story. Remember, you didn't just wake up one day and get here. You got here for
Yes.
various reasons in your story, and the compassionate curiosity, love of God and to yourself and from others is going to move you into deeper places of healing, and it's the longing that will drive it. So, I hope that this landed on you well, and we'll see you next week. We are so thankful for the talented Tanya Godsey offering her amazing music with us. You can find Tanya on Spotify and other streaming platforms. And as always, thank you for letting us share about the not so easy stories that make us, and entering into the honesty and courage it takes to love who you were created to be. So until the next time, friends, may God's love and kindness be an offering to your heart, both now and always.